Imagine a street where every lawn is trimmed, every mailbox neat, where children's backpacks vanish into cars each morning, and porches are used more for potted plants than conversations. You live within eyesight of neighbors, yet you might not know a single person's first name. That quiet is not always peace. It can be loneliness. Today you'll follow people across suburbs, students, parents, older adults, to see how invisible communities form, how isolation takes root, and how simple, intentional practices restore connection. Mornings in suburbia often feel like choreography. Timers, carpools, calendars, everyone moves on schedule. You see backpacks, lunchboxes, a flurry of waves through car windows. The logistics work, but the chances for unplanned human contact are few. In a neighborhood built for driving, spontaneous conversations at the corner store or on a walk are rarer. Researchers find that reduced incidental interaction erodes a sense of being seen. Adolescents may be surrounded by classmates yet feel peripheral. Adults with flexible work schedules may cross paths without connecting. Older neighbors pass on walks but seldom stop. This isn't a moral failing, it's design. Streets that prioritize cars over porches. Activities scheduled without communal hangout space. Small social architecture changes, shared benches, crossing guard chats, community bulletin boards, create tiny opportunities for attention that add up. Proximity does not guarantee connection. You can live a few houses from someone and occupy entirely different social circles. Adolescents report feeling lonely despite being surrounded by peers. Adults manage work, childcare, and errands, with little free time for social risk like knocking on a neighbor's door. Older adults may feel invisible after retirement or mobility changes. Studies underscore an uncomfortable truth. Loneliness correlates less with physical distance and more with the structure of everyday relationships. Peer networks, the regular ties that bring people into repeated, meaningful interaction, are what create belonging. When those networks are sparse or fragile, loneliness grows. In schools, the size and shape of peer networks matter. Smaller schools can provide closeness, but they can also magnify exclusion. One adolescent's withdrawal becomes visible when there are fewer friends to bridge isolation. Research on relational health shows that students flourish when they feel seen and valued by peers and adults. Advisory groups, structured mentorships, and cooperative projects give students repeated, predictable spaces to practice connection. Imagine a weekly circle where a student shares one thing that went well and one thing that challenged them. Over time, that pattern creates mutual recognition and trust. The effort is modest: one teacher, one room, a consistent schedule. But the payoff is resilience, improved emotional regulation, and a decline in loneliness. Adults face unique barriers. Workplaces in suburban areas may be spread out, with fewer communal hubs. Offices with cubicles, home offices, or isolated shifts can reduce incidental conversations that build trust. Adults often prioritize obligations, children's schedules, elder care, overtime, over social experiments that feel risky. Yet studies show that purpose-driven group activities, volunteer teams, hobby clubs, neighborhood projects strengthen connections and increase well-being. A weekly volunteering commitment or a neighborhood book club can shift someone from observer to participant. Practicality matters. Meetings scheduled with childcare, carpool coordination, or remote participation options lower barriers. When adults are invited into roles that use their skills and offer small leadership moments, they're more likely to stay engaged and to foster relationships that sustain them through life's stresses. Older adults experience loneliness when routines narrow and daily opportunities to connect fade. Retirement, loss of mobility, or the passing of friends can shrink a person's social map. But the solution isn't only companionship. It's meaningful roles, intergenerational programs, mentorships with youth, community gardens, skills workshops, restore purpose and reciprocal exchange. When older adults teach, mentor, or co-create with younger neighbors, they reclaim agency and visibility. Counselors and community leaders who prioritize strengths, not deficits, help craft roles that match interest and ability. Small gestures, setting up a transportation list, inviting a neighbor to a local meeting, organizing a storytelling circle at the library, create entry points into ongoing engagement. Unstructured spaces shape social narratives. A park bench can be a place of solace or a missed handshake. Informal spots offer low-stakes opportunities for contact. The library table where a parent and teen borrow a novel. The playground where an older neighbor pushes a swing. The coffee shop where someone sketches a plan and a passerby asks about it. These moments are where trust often begins. Intentional design to encourage these encounters. Benches facing each other, community notice boards, weekend markets, creates environments that support spontaneous connection. Programs that encourage neighbors to share skills or time turn these brief interactions into repeated exchanges that build belonging. Evidence points to structured, consistent programs as among the most effective strategies for combating loneliness. Weekly gatherings, cooperative projects, and mentorship relationships provide predictable context for repeated interaction, exactly what relational health requires. Programs that pair adolescents with adult mentors, that create community service projects spanning ages, or that form neighborhood improvement teams, increase connectedness significantly. Consistency matters more than intensity. A short, reliable weekly meeting beats a sporadic festival. The mechanisms are simple. Shared goals, recognized contributions, and routine contact build trust. And as trust grows, people move from peripheral roles into active community members. Counselors, mentors, and community leaders create relational bridges. They ask practical, guiding questions. What would it look like to invite one neighbor to coffee? Who in your life might welcome your help? How could you contribute to a local project? These prompts shift loneliness from a private burden into a solvable relational challenge. Programs that train mentors in listening, in noticing strengths rather than deficits, and in scaffolding participation help people feel valued. Counseling reframes loneliness, not as a personal failing, but as a signal of relational gaps. Gaps that can be filled through practice, invitation, and small commitments. Stories shape identity. When neighborhoods narrate themselves as connected and capable, residents begin to act accordingly. Community storytelling through murals, oral history nights, neighborhood newsletters creates shared memory and purpose. Participatory arts projects like painting a mural with students and elders invite everyone into authorship. That shared authorship binds people to place and to each other. You'll meet people who say they joined because they wanted to give back, others who needed help and found purpose in helping. These narratives flip the script. Instead of being invisible, people become protagonists in a communal story that values their presence. Connection often begins with small invitations. A simple question, would you like to join us for a walk, has power because it lowers social risk. Repeated invitations matter. Research shows that people often need multiple invitations before they accept. Persistence combined with warmth and low-pressure offers increases inclusion. Think of invitations as relational infrastructure, an easy entry point that can become a weekly practice. Neighborhoods that cultivate a culture of invitation create far more connection than those that rely solely on formal programs. Evidence suggests clear effects. Studies that track participants in mentorship programs, intergenerational projects, and consistent advisory groups report reductions in self-reported loneliness and improvements in mental health, empathy, and civic engagement. Peer interventions can increase a sense of belonging by up to 30–40%. Consistent relational practices and community engagement show similar gains. These outcomes matter because the feeling of belonging quietly shapes our health, how we learn, and how we grow across a lifetime. The takeaway is refreshingly practical. Structured, consistent chances to connect truly make a difference. They don't have to be grand or costly. What matters most is that they're steady and dependable. You don't have to remake a whole town to begin. Start with what's feasible. Invite one person to a regular activity. Volunteer an hour each week at a local school or senior center. Organize a simple neighborhood cleanup. Create an advisory circle at work or school that meets for 15 minutes each week. These small acts, repeated, reshape social expectations and create new networks. The most durable changes are incremental, consistent practices that normalize being seen and being welcoming. Addressing suburban loneliness requires multiple levels. Policy can fund community centers, safe pedestrian infrastructure, and programs that bridge generations. Institutions, schools, libraries, workplaces can embed structured relational time regularly. Residents can cultivate habits of invitation and service. When policy, institutions, and everyday practices align, the environment supports repeated interactions that build trust. Practical steps include scheduling consistent advisory time in schools, funding intergenerational community coordinators, incentivizing employers to support volunteer hours, and designing public spaces for face-to-face encounters. I used to feel invisible on my street, a parent says. Now I help lead the weekend cleanup. That morning changed everything. An older neighbor shares. When a teen asked me to teach woodworking, I felt useful again. A student adds, our advisory circle was small, but it felt like someone noticed me. Change is not instant. People are cautious. Invitations feel risky. Programs take time to build trust. The tension is real. How do you persist when the first few attempts don't land? The insight is simple but powerful. Keep the invitations gentle, welcoming, and easy to say yes to, and keep extending them again and again. Trust accumulates by repetition. Institutions must be patient and design schedules that allow relationships to develop. Over time, repeated small ties become robust networks that sustain people through life's ups and downs. Suburban loneliness is a solvable problem when communities intentionally create spaces for repeated, meaningful interaction. It's not about flashy solutions or one-off events. It's about steady practices, advisory circles, mentorships, intergenerational projects, regular invitations, and places designed to bring people together. When you combine policy support, institutional routines, and everyday neighborliness, invisible communities begin to show themselves as visible belonging. For those curious to explore these ideas further, look to the work of Tamar Mendelsohn, Richard Weisbord, Sean Kelly, and Stephanie Menn-Jones. Their research explains how relational health, peer networks, and structured programming support connection across the lifespan. If you'd like more resources, you can find related recordings and curated playlists that dive deeper into peer programs, intergenerational initiatives, and practical community design. Subscribing helps sustain this educational journey and supports future conversations. Thank you for learning with us today. Remember, every invitation matters, every repeated meeting builds trust, and every person matters in the story of community.